Thanks for finding the Locked On NFL podcast on YouTube. We're going to have great content all super week leading you up to the big game. Bengals, Rams. It's going to be a fun one to talk about the NFC champion Los Angeles Rams. Of course, the host of Locked On Rams, Travis Rodgers. He joins us here on the Locked On NFL podcast. And, Travis, when you watch this one, trailing by 10 in the fourth quarter, the Rams rallied back, a bit back and forth earlier on, but was it the defense that got this team back in and the pressure that they applied on Jimmy Garoppolo, or was it more so on the offense that we should be congratulating?
Yeah, I think it probably goes a little bit to both, Bo. But I think if I had to pick one or the other, I'd maybe give a little bit of a slight edge to the offense. They were down 10 points going into the fourth quarter. They were able to put points on the board 3 different times there in the fourth quarter. They got the big touchdown that they absolutely had to have at that point to bring them back to within that spot where at least you knew that if they got the ball one more time, they'd have a chance to tie the game. We've talked about this before. This is why they went out and got Matthew Stafford for games like this, for moments like this, that this was a team that, was limited at the quarterback position previously. They felt like they needed to make an upgrade, and they certainly did. And he proved that he was more than worth the expense of a couple of draft picks in his very first year. We'll see what happens coming up here in a couple of weeks. But, it was actually kind of quiet day for Aaron Donald and the defense for most of it. They didn't give up a ton of points. I don't think you're typically going to give up a lot of points to the Niners. That's just not how it goes. But when they needed to make a big play at the end there, you saw Aaron Donald, there's Von Miller, just the guys that needed to step up in the biggest moments of the game. They were able to do it, and they're going to the Super Bowl.
I want to get into maybe a conversation about Matthew Stafford's legacy and how it's kind of evolving here. But another guy on that offense who came up big, the Triple Crown winner in receiving, Cooper Kupp, continues to just play at a high level. Huge game against the Bucs. Another big game, 2 touchdowns in this contest. How has he been able to continue that success throughout the playoffs when people know about him?
I was talking with DeMarco Farr after the game, who does the sidelines for the Rams, and I asked him almost that exact same question, that this is somebody that coming into this season you knew was going to be the #1 offensive weapon on this team as far as wide receivers go. And all he does is go out and catch 10 or 12 balls a game for about 120 yards a game. He gets a touchdown or 2, and it's every single week. It's gotten to the point where it's almost expected that this is the sort of performance that he's going to give you. I don't know. I would imagine that everybody inside SoFi Stadium knew on that 3rd and 3 play as we were getting down in short 10. The Rams were in long field goal range, right? This was, maybe they were there, but you're talking 55 yards, give or take a few, and they need to get one more first down. It's 3rd and 3. There wasn't one person in SoFi Stadium tonight that didn't know where that ball was going, and yet he got open. He broke a couple of tackles. It's a 25-yard gain. They end up being in a field goal position where just about any NFL kicker is going to be able to knock that one through, and it just continues to be an extraordinary season for an extraordinary player.
So the Rams were the first team on the board and then pretty stagnant until about the fourth quarter, but then they cash in on their 3 final drives. What were they able to kind of really do to kind of re-energize, get the offense going after kind of being stagnant for a while?
I think they're a much better offense when they play with pace. This is not a team that is going, despite the fact that they had nearly a 9-minute drive today that went 90-plus yards and that did take a ton of time off the clock. That's not typically what they are. They get a bunch of chunk plays. They collect yardage in big pieces. And when they can get into a rhythm, and they got a couple of stops, they didn't have to go onto the sidelines and all of a sudden sit there and wait. I thought that Kyle Shanahan made an interesting decision to punt there late in the game after that fumble review kind of goes his way. It's 4th down. Maybe do you go for it? Do you not go for it? They get the ball back. They drive down again. They score again. But the more plays that the Rams can run, the better that offense is. The more rhythm that they're able to find, the better that offense is. And they had it early. We saw the interception on the goal line. That wasn't good. And then they had the long drive. But really, other than that, it was kind of stops and starts along the way. When they finally able to run a bunch of plays in a row, the offense started to look like we've become familiar with.
So we've seen these teams, they faced off 3 times this year. The regular season finale, the Niners were able to come back and win dramatically in overtime. But when we were looking at this game with just over a minute and a half left, and Jimmy G and this 49ers offense was getting the ball again, we know the record lately. 6-0 the Niners were against the Rams. Was it, here we go again? Or, what was Raheem Morris? What did he do differently as far as calling the defensive plays this time around that made them so successful in stopping Jimmy G, unlike this regular season finale?
Yeah, the big part, and I think you're right, Bo, is that this felt terribly familiar. The end, though, the way that it ended at the first half, I turned to Kirk Morrison, who does, pregame and postgame with me, and I said to him, I've seen this movie before. I know how this goes, where the Rams were not able to get they missed the field goal towards the end of the first half. Niners get the ball back. We know the Niners are going to get the ball to start the second half. They're on the move. Debo makes a big play, and all of a sudden they got a little momentum, and it just felt so incredibly familiar to what we saw before. After that, the Rams defense in the second half in particular really stiff and really did a much, much better job. And, this is something that we've said on Locked On Rams. This is during the crossover episode that we did with the Locked On Niners guys. When Jimmy G gets in a position, where he has to throw the ball, that's when he's at his most vulnerable. When they're able to run that ball, then he can hit you with some pretty quick ones. And we saw him escape a couple of times. He's a pretty good athlete back there, but I think that's what it was. I think they were able to kind of control the Niner running game really for the first time in a very long time and make it a Jimmy Garoppolo game. And that proved to be a pretty good deal for the Rams.
Yeah. Final question about the quarterback, Matthew Stafford. You mentioned, why they make this move. We see in the suite, we see his wife brought to tears. And what did you hear from Matthew Stafford? What does advancing to the Super Bowl mean to him after, struggling in Detroit for so long, 0-3 in the postseason, everybody doubting him going into this playoffs? What did you hear from the quarterback?
Well, I think this is one of the very rare times where it kind of worked out the best for everybody, because he gave the Detroit Lions 12 years. He gave him his heart and soul. He's a tough player. He's a very, very good player. The team just wasn't very good. And I think he got to the point where he realized, I want to play in important games. I want to play in a Super Bowl. I want to play in NFC Championship games. And it's not going to happen here in Detroit. I'd like to go try if I can see and make it happen somewhere else. The Rams were more than willing to make it happen. They paid a very high price to get him here, a couple of first-round draft picks like we've talked about. And I don't know who's happier. I don't know if the Rams are happier for making the deal and bringing Stafford over and putting them back in the Super Bowl, or Matthew Stafford's happier for the fact that he got to get out of Detroit and really, the rare exit where there are not a lot of hard feelings. I think the people in Detroit are probably pretty happy that Matthew Stafford's in the Super Bowl. I'm sure they'd like to see their own squad, but they think very highly of him. And it was a win across the board. They got one more to go. This is what he was brought here to do. This was, I said it on Locked On Rams that they brought him here to win a game like they needed him in Tampa. Well, he did it again this week, and we'll see whether he has to do it again against the Bengals here in Super Bowl 56. But so far, everything that they could have hoped for with the quarterback has been true.
No doubt about it. And there's more on that, I'm sure, on today's edition of Locked On Rams. It's a must listen until the big game. That's 2 weeks of shows. Can't wait for it. We're going to get tremendous insight, of course, from Travis Rodgers. Make sure you're following along on Twitter at Travis Rodgers. Travis, always fun to catch up with you.
Always.